Hello, guys. Welcome to my very first podcast. I have the lovely Summer here, sports psychologist and performance coach here, Ula. Today, we're going to be talking about the top 5 soft skills that we think can make you the best player you can be. Why I think this is important is because you could be a very talented player, but if you can't bring yourself to be your best self consistently, then you're not going to be nearly as good as a player as you can be, and you'll eventually hit a wall. So soft skills are often slept upon, in my opinion, and today I just wanted to bring awareness and education to the usefulness of bringing them to your skill set. Without further ado, how are you guys doing today, Ula and Summer?
Good. I'm excited. I'm so excited.
I'm great.
to do
I'm
this
great.
today.
Excited. It's like summer is our first podcast that we're doing together, right? Like, I think so.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy that it's taken this long to put the two of us on the same podcast, but now it's double trouble. The two epic performance coaches
Indeed.
of CLG in one spot.
Yeah, I've worked with both of you guys. I thought it was just fitting to have you guys on this topic since I've learned a lot from the both of you. But yeah, I wanted to just start off the topic, I guess, get right into the meat of it all. I just wanted to start off with what I think is one of the more important points within like soft skills and things that you can do outside of just like your typical CS or any game you're playing. So to me, I think concentration is a really big like soft skill. I think it affects so many aspects of the game, and it also branches out to a lot of different things. So just to give you guys a bit of an example, when I think of like concentration, I'm thinking of like where your mind is. So are you focusing on the score of the game? Are you thinking about how you're going to lose? Are you thinking about how easy this win's going to be? Are you focusing on how good or bad you're doing? Are you thinking about what you're going to eat later, what game you're going to play later on, what you want to do after practice? Are you caught up on being frustrated on the previous round? These are all like examples of things that are very common and a big problem for a lot of up and coming players. So I think that like with the expertise of these two lovely women, I think it'll be really useful to just like break down this topic and a couple other topics. And again, for the chat, if you guys want to chime in with questions at any point, feel free. We're just going to be a little bit free flow here. But yeah, what do you guys like, I guess, think so far?
So like mainly around concentration, right?
Yeah, we can start off with concentration, but we can go wherever like our heart desires, really.
Whenever I think about concentration, I agree with you. It's about limiting these distractions, and you need to be able to recognize that like a lot of times people think about distractions as like what's outside of you. So if you're playing at home, it's like your dog barking next to you, it's your parents calling up to you when you're in the middle of a game asking you to do chores. It's the garbage truck that is way too obnoxious outside your window. Like these are the distractions that people think about a lot when like they're trying to game at home. It's just things that create noise that make it more difficult to just like pay attention to what you're doing. For a pro competitor, it's like crowd noise, right? Or your coach yelling at you. So that's like what gets a lot of the attention first, right? And like for good reason. If you can actually address reasonable things that are like very obviously getting in your way, then getting those out of the way is a great way to improve your level of concentration. It's just decreasing the amount of things that take away the effort that you need to put into paying attention to the game. Easy sauce. But the thing that people often neglect is that probably one of the most distracting things is going to likely be the things that you're saying in your head. As Goose is saying, this is like, oh dude, I'm kind of hungry. I'm like, I wonder what I can eat later. Or like, holy crap, I feel so nervous. Like these are actually things that are going to take away from your gameplay. And very simply, when you are trying to maximize your gameplay, you want to be able to be focused on things that are task right? Relevant to you performing whatever you need to do in the game in order to be successful. And basically all these things on the list are just simply task irrelevant. So it's your only job to improve concentration is to distinguish what are the task relevant things that I need to have attention on, and how often am I actually maintaining that attention? And if there are things they're pulling away from it, either internally or externally, then you need to put concentrated effort into addressing those things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'll top it up a little bit with the aspect of time traveling, because that is also impacting a lot of concentration. So when players are actually in the game, they tend to think about, okay, last time we played with that team, we lost, and that's already like, you know, a seed that is planted in your head, and they're already thinking like, what is going to happen today? And the same is with time travel into the future, where players are thinking like, okay, we've got one more game to win, and you just like, you know, keep on thinking about the outcome itself. Every time a player is time traveling, and every time a player is not in the now, like here and now is the moment that the player should be always when playing the game, the players are losing the concentration, because that self-confidence is dropping. And then we tend to rush a lot of things when we're playing the game, and as a result, obviously, we tend to lose those sparks for the game, for the activity that we should be doing right now. Winning is never a goal. Winning is never something that we should be looking forward to. Winning is the outcome of how well we are doing the job we're about to do now. So when we're focused on the job now, then the outcome, it will take care of itself, basically. So that's also a matter of focus, how well you're capable of like focusing on, hey, I'm playing the game now, I like that game, I've been training that game for such a long time, I'm super confident that I'm capable of doing a lot of things with it.
These are all really good points too. And just like knowing the both of you, like we've had a lot of these discussions too as well. I think something that is like relevant to what you both have been saying is I worked a bit on like mindfulness, for example, with GooseBreeder, and I have worked a lot about like time traveling within the team, Ula. So I think these are both like really key points. Something from even my own experience that I think a lot of people can struggle with, even if you don't struggle with it right now, you might hit a slump where you eventually start struggling with it. So like an issue I had in 2019, just to give some context for players, is that like I had a lot of negative like self-talk. So when I would make a mistake, I would get caught up on it. And again, like this is all focus, right? My focus would be drifted to something like an inner talk I was having with myself. Like, oh, I can't believe I messed that up. Like, and then I would just go into this rabbit hole of like just my mind being somewhere outside of the game. And through learning like mindfulness, I was able to kind of like bring myself back from these like distractions and bring myself into the now, like Ula's saying, like time traveling. So I guess I was just curious too what you guys think. Like, how do players like, how can they get better at recognizing when they're hitting these moments of like time traveling, and how can they work on themselves and master like skills to recognize when they're doing this and like pull themselves back into like the now and like what matters?
I think mindfulness is like one of the best tools for this, because it's a practice that when done regularly helps build your awareness. It builds your awareness of your physiological state, right? It helps you understand, like, am I really tense, right? Like that's really when it comes down to us feeling tilted or anything. Like it really comes down to, yes, you're having distracting thoughts, so therefore you're not focusing on the task relevant things in the game. But like another unsung hero of things that could actually solve a problem is understanding the muscle tension. Understanding that when you are more stressed, your muscles are more tight. It makes it harder to move your mouse. It messes with your reaction times, right? Like just that tension changes the normal state in which you play, and then can negatively impact your ability to just manipulate your own body, which, while gaming is not the most physical of sports, there is that physical aspect. You can't ignore it. Just because it's like smaller than a traditional sport doesn't mean you can ignore the tactile nature of a game. So just building your awareness of what your mind and body are doing is the first line of defense that you have to start solving the problem, because you cannot do anything about things that you're not aware. And I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that are just so blind to how they're navigating life. They're not doing things intentionally. They just kind of feel something that day, like that day. They're like, I'm angry and therefore I'm just going to yell, right? They don't recognize that they have choice in that situation.
Yeah.
You can make
Yeah, I
active
guess
choices to go against like what your feelings are.
absolutely. And like, you know, when kids are hungry or when kids are tired or frustrated, then they cry, they yell, they cannot control emotions. But we as adults, we learn to control everything. So when we're sleepy, we grab coffee, right? When we're tired, or fed up with something, we tend to like, you know, boost our body with something, and we're not listening what the body is saying. The same is with the thoughts, I guess, because you talking about mindfulness, we need to like make it loud and clear. It's the control of the thoughts that are going through your head. So like you cannot approach the game having the thought that, oh my god, they're so much better, or oh my god, my team is like not in the mood today, oh my god, like one of my teammates is having some stuff around and probably they will not focus. If your head is like full of like thoughts that are taking your attention off the game, you will never be able to enjoy what you're doing. And it's always, you know, pure enjoyment and passion from the stuff that you're doing that it always translates into the outcome itself. So those thoughts, that negative self-talk that you mentioned, Goose, is super, super, super important to control, because if we are aware that the thoughts that we're bringing, they're dragging us down into either like a cycle of success or cycle of failure, then obviously we are making a choice where we want to go. If we bring the negative self-talk, obviously then we have cycle of failure that is hitting us hard, with low self-awareness, with low self-confidence, with a lot of stuff that are like, you know, going through our head, like, you know, oh my God, it will be so difficult to win today, and so on and so forth. And then that execution of the stuff that we're doing is super tense, is never natural. We're just like forcing things. We're like either hyper aggressive, or we're just like super, super afraid to make a play. And that intuition, that is a key in here, it's just all gone. So I guess those thoughts, that level of awareness that you, Summer, mentioned, it's super important to have it and to be able to like realize, okay, so what am I thinking when I'm approaching the game? Am I thinking about negative stuff, or am I thinking about stuff that I really like about the game? So what is my best play? What am I going to play today? How am I going to execute it? And when your thoughts are purely in the game and you focus on yourself, then that growth is super visible.
I want to really zone in. Like, I hope, Goose, you can talk about this more, of like how people look at the end of a game as if like there's nothing more to do, as if they've like exited the process somehow, that like because the game is over now it's just like that's it, like there's nothing more to do. But like
Yeah.
the job is still ongoing immediately after a win or a loss. Like there's immediate tasks for a competitor to do directly after. Like that game was not the end all be all. So I thought that was really
Yeah.
powerful.
No, there was honestly so many points that I wanted to even touch on just from all of this. I think that there, honestly, like how you take a loss is really important, even not just for that short period of time, but as a team culture, how you react to those losses can often like make or break a team. If you start harping on them, you start getting really stressed out, negative every time you lose. Like it's just such a bad domino effect. But I think that like what I wanted to touch on too, that I thought it was a really useful like tool for myself to learn, but also what you were saying too, Summer, and to kind of tie into a lot of what we were saying. I think something that like really stuck with me is what you said is like a thought doesn't really define me. Just because I have a thought doesn't really make that like who I am. And I think like knowing that helped me filter out like if I had a thought, if I was doing something that wasn't proven useful to like myself, like, hey, the thought of thinking I'm a shitty CS player and I'm awful at the game, like, yeah, it doesn't really serve me. So I'm just gonna like let that one go. So I think like the skill of being able to let thoughts go and not hold on to them helped me a lot with like not getting stuck on things. Even in CS, like I use this a lot where I'll even notice like, ah, fuck, like I'm kind of whiffing right now. And instead of like getting stuck on me whiffing, I'm like, okay, like it's fine. I'm whiffing a little bit. I'm still gonna make like the plays I would always make. Like I just kind of like let it go. I don't get stuck on the fact that I'm whiffing a few rounds, because like I can always come back and I might do fine like throughout the half. But if I get stuck on the fact that I'm like whiffing a little bit now, I might kind of, you know, like start playing scared, start turtling up, start letting like kind of what you were getting into as well, Ula. And I guess I kind of wanted to give like an example for players, like how does this like, how does like tuning your thoughts to like what it should be look like, I guess. Something that I personally do is I try to gear my mind towards what I should be thinking on, because I think it's harder if I'm like, what shouldn't I think on? What shouldn't I think about? So I try to focus my efforts on like what I should be doing. And if I end up having thoughts that aren't useful, I try to like let them go and carry on with like focusing on what's useful. And I'm actually someone who like actually has like ADD too. So I'm often like gonna have distractions, so this is actually a really useful tool for myself, even more so because of that. I can get distracted a little bit easier, so being able to pull myself back quickly is a really useful skill for myself. um, so I guess like what it looks like for me is, even that I'm IGLing is kind of funny. So what I do that keeps me in the zone is like every round, like I try to put distractions aside, like external, whatever I can control. And like literally only thing on my desk is this random thing and like a fucking drink of some drink. But yeah, so getting into like what I was saying is like at the start of the round, I'm thinking about like what do I need to think about right now. So at the beginning, I'm like, okay, like I need to get the call out in freeze time. Like that's my first goal. Like, okay, like make the call. Like what do I want to call right here? I make the call. And then as an individual, I'm thinking, okay, like what do I need to do this round? Like what's my goal? What do I need to get done? And I'm like, I'm constantly thinking about what I should be doing rather than any fucking thing else. Like anything else, if it's not what I should be doing right now, like get it out of my mind. Did I whiff? I don't care. Did someone fuck up last round? Like it doesn't matter. Like flash whiffed, like I can't believe we lost this round, like that flash miss and it's so like lame. Like okay, like forget about it. Like what do I need to do now? Because I think like in a match, that's like the only thing that matters right now is like what do we do now? And I think all that extra stuff, if it doesn't affect the current round, or like anything useful going forward, I think it just like has no business like taking up space, and it's like it doesn't serve you purpose like within the game. So I think like as a player, that's like my advice on like how I break it down into like an actual game setting, is just like trying to channel my focus into like what I should be doing. And I guess like I was also gonna think too, like Ula, since you often talk about time traveling, which I think is like also, I like the term honestly. I think it's like a good way to name it. Um, I was like curious, like I guess what you think about time traveling, but also how like your emotion kind of plays into like clouding your thoughts and like I guess making it hard for you to, I don't know, think straight, I guess.
Like time traveling and what you said, like having that level of awareness, like where your thoughts going, is actually impacting the emotions. And one thing that is super important is the fact that you as a person, like every single person, whether you're IGL or a player, you cannot control everything. So that aspect of being in charge of everything and yourself trying to be controlling every aspect of the game, that doesn't exist. There are things you can control, and the only things you can control in the game is yourself. Now, when you're IGLing or when you're playing a game and you're thinking whether my teammate will actually, throw a smoke properly, whether they will, I don't know, plant properly or whatever it's going to happen, you're constantly thinking about everyone else. And then you lose that focus on yourself, on what you're capable of, and those emotions, they're all over the place because you're not enjoying what you're doing. You're only constantly putting on yourself a lot of pressure and a lot of negative thoughts for every single mistake that is happening during the game. And that is just drugging you down. It's like something heavy that is just like trying to like prevent you from doing your good job. Now, the uncontrollables could be like compared into the aspect that sometimes we think like yeah, I'm angry because it's raining, right? Like it doesn't make sense that you're angry because it's raining. It's raining. We cannot do anything about it, right? So it's the same. Like I'm angry because somebody missed a flash. Like okay, so you can be angry. It's your choice that you're going to have frustration. You're going to like, uh, get like a lot of tension, as Summer said at the very beginning, because these are negative emotions that are bringing us into like, the mode that we don't want to be in, and you losing that middle part of yourself, the one that you're in the zone, and with yourself trying to control everything, that zone part is not like you cannot go into that zone when you're trying to control everything or everything and everyone around you. So that is super connected with emotions, and it's again the thoughts that we should control, right? So whether I should be in that thought process that I'm drifting away and I'm just trying to focus on, what my teammates are doing, or whether I'm just trying to figure out a solution into a play that just actually was like misplay or something. So this is like totally different aspect of seeing how your thoughts are flowing.
Yeah. I think that's a good point
I
too.
want to.
Like even oh, you can go ahead if you want, sorry.
I just wanted to like build off of Ula's point, because I want to resolve the problem that people are going to have with this before it even
Yeah.
becomes a problem. The main thing when people think about like control and emotions is that they think they can do that, which sometimes the attempt at controlling your emotions can become the distraction in and of itself. So the same way that we were talking about like these thoughts and just kind of accepting them as thoughts, right? Like also the same thing is true of your emotions. The idea is not to reject the fact that you were angry. It's a yes and equation. It's not an either or, right? It's like, yeah, I am in fact angry about that, justifiably, and I'm going to continue playing the game that I know and love and do the things that I need to do. So yes, and it's not an either or. Oftentimes people get stuck in that dichotomy where they're like, oh, well, I'm mad, so I can't apologize. It's like, no, you absolutely can still apologize to a teammate, even when you're angry. You're capable of a lot when you have emotions. Even when you have a lot of different kinds and they're complex and mixed, you're still capable of a lot. It's just energy that you have in your body to do with what you want. That's the beauty of emotion. A lot of times people reject it and try to push it away. But at the same time, they like take away the energy that they have to put into the game. It gives you like adrenaline, right? It gives you that passion to play, whether it's good or bad. It's still energy that is yours for the taking. So if you are trying to reject it, then you're leaving good things on the table. So you need to trust in your ability to direct the power in you, not just try to say, I don't like the kind of power this is, so I'm just not gonna bring it into my play.
I don't want to play.
And the other, yeah, like I don't know. Like, the other thing is like, people get stuck on being right, where it's just like, well, I was right to be angry there. It's just like, yes, but like, would you like to be right or would you like to be effective? I like being effective most of the time. I will absolutely choose being effective and getting what I want at the end of the day than just being right in a singular moment. So just like understand that you can be completely correct in your assessment of a situation. Like one thing that Ula talked about earlier was like, oh, I think my teammate's really mad at me or they're like upset with me. And it's just like, you can be correct. Like they could in fact be upset with you. What you do with that information is completely different though. Um, and sometimes it's going to be actually speaking with that teammate and trying to go after some sort of mediation or resolution. Sometimes it's really just on them to figure out their own crap. And there was nothing for you to do about it. And that we just need to exist in a universe where other people have emotions too. So I think that's like the long and short of it. Like, don't get too hung up on trying to make reality what you want to make of it. Like, we're constantly taking in new information and reevaluating and changing course. And again, coming back to my first point is that is both on an internal and external basis. It could be things that are happening outside of you in the game with other people, and it can also be an ever-changing state inside with different thoughts and feelings ebbing and flowing. All is okay. We just have to make active choices against how we want to behave accordingly.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's something that I think I honestly try to apply more and more often too within myself is I think for like a little while now, I try to do everything with like purpose. Like at the end of the day, I'm trying to think of my end result and my goal. Like what am I trying to achieve here? And I think it's really easy like sometimes to get caught up, to get frustrated even like joining like going into like a leadership position, like it's inevitable that you're gonna be frustrated sometimes. It's just like part of it. I think like what you do with that is huge. I think that's like even something you've told me before where it's like, well, is your like frustration, like is it do like it's like okay to be frustrated, but is it like affecting like the end result, I guess. So like if I'm too caught up on being frustrated, I might not do like the right steps anymore that will achieve like the result I want. So it's like, yeah, like maybe I was right here, maybe I have the right to be frustrated, but if I get caught up in being frustrated, then I might lose sight of the end game goal and I might not achieve my like end result by like getting caught up in that emotion. I think that like
Yeah, and
a that's a good like point for anyone really, and not even just an emotion, but just to like any way you go about a team setting is to think about like what are you going to achieve with whatever you're doing, whether it's like giving critique, which in itself is a skill, giving and accepting critique, like what is the end result in what you're doing, and is the things you are doing now, is that going to like achieve that end result? And if like the answer is no, then I feel like you need to readjust, whether it's like how you're talking to your teammate, whether it's like getting caught up in frustration and being right, like you said. And I just wanted to add to that. It sounded like you wanted to say something, Ula. What were you thinking?
Mhm. No, I was just willing to add, like, the moment you realize that you're frustrated and you're like thinking about the end results, like what's going to happen now because like I'm frustrated or something, then if you see it coming, then you can also control it by, by breathing. Like that's the easiest way. Like if you feel like the extra frustration is coming, you're about to make a decision and you don't want your, head to be clouded with thoughts that you should not have that moment, then breathing is actually one of the techniques that is calming you down. So again, Summer, our favorite word, awareness.
Awareness.
True.
Um, and when you're trying to assess your success in building this skill, right? This focus, concentration, mindfulness, like if you're trying to just really boil it down to simple skills, when you want to improve your focus, all you are trying to get good at is one, identifying more often when you are not focusing on the correct thing, right? If you are able to catch yourself more frequently and faster, then that is a sign that you're becoming more and more successful. And once you have built in that awareness, the next step is how quickly am I able to snap back, right? And there are some days that it's just really tough. Like your thoughts are just really sticky for some reason. And that's going to change. It's fine. It's the same way as like when you're playing your games. Like sometimes like the shots just flow from you. You're just hitting them all. And other days you're just whiffing constantly. Like some days things just don't hit the same, and that's okay. So it's not so much about like how frequently you have these distracted days. You're really just looking at the awareness equation of how often you're recognizing that you're like off the deep end, and then you're just trying to get really efficient at bringing it back laser focused to a task relevant cue. Those are the two main things that you're focused on. Getting good at those two things is all you're really looking to do.
Yeah. How would you
Yeah, and to
suggest like
reinforce.
your oh, sorry. I was gonna say, how do you
Go ahead, go
suggest
ahead,
like
go
your
ahead.
average person gets better at that, I guess? Because they might not even know like where to start really.
The awareness portion can really be improved by the mindfulness activities that we talked about, right? Just kind of paying attention to those thoughts and feelings. So we got the awareness exercise. Another great thing to do is like body scan meditation, right? Just Google it. There's probably a ton of YouTube videos that will just walk you through. There's like calm.com, Headspace, so many tools. And what you're looking for is something that will walk you through shining your mind's eye, like your awareness, on different body parts. So just starting from your head and going down to your neck and your shoulders, examining your arms for tension. And all you're doing is just trying to bring awareness to your body so that you understand what it's doing, so that you can recognize if there's tension there that you didn't know before. I know when I'm lacking awareness, like I'll be super stressed and my shoulders are up here and I'm just like, oh,
Yeah.
why do I feel so stressed? And then I realize that my shoulders are at my ears. I'm just like, wait,
Oh,
okay,
this makes a
let
lot
me
of
just like
sense.
relax
Yeah.
this out. Yeah.
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 So those two things for the awareness parts, like the thoughts and the body sensations will raise awareness. And then with regard to just like snapping it back, it's really just going to come down to repetition of catching yourself in those thought chains and being like, nope, I'm going to focus on this. And sometimes you need to be very, very aggressive with your thoughts. Be like, no, staffu, don't care, not relevant, you're not right,
Plus
lying.
ratio.
Like, yeah,
plus
like these
ratio
are actually
your thoughts.
there's a yes, ratio the crap out of your thoughts. Okay, like there's a real term for this. It's called howitzer mantras. So whenever you're ratioing your thoughts, it's a real thing. So get into that Twitter feed, start ratioing the shit out of them, and say like, hey, like you don't deserve to be here. You are not relevant. I have better things to focus on. And it's okay if you have to be that aggressive with yourself, because probably the voice in your head that is the voice you're trying to get rid of, probably really not a nice person anyway. Like you would not be friends with that voice in your head, like at all. You'd like if someone was friends with them, you'd look at them and be like, that's kind of sus. So don't feel bad for yelling at the voice in your head, especially if it's not being nice to you.
Yeah, I will top it up with something. Like sometimes when you're learning, you're trying to understand like how you react into things. It's good to rewatch what you just played. So like if you played a set of scrims or like a game and you're like filled with emotions, try to rewatch it and try to name it what were the moments that were actually triggering you. And then we usually remember what we thought. So that's the moment to like, take a piece of paper, open Word or like Excel or whatever, and put in notes like, hey, that's the thought that just came in. This is what happened. This is why I was frustrated. And then you start learning yourself what is triggering it. So that's the type of exercise that it's like easy. You can do it with yourself, but it's allowing you to have those moments of like, hey, it's coming. I'm going to be angry again. Or like my emotions are coming. Like that's the similar situations. The more, as Summer said, the more you name it, the more you repeat it, the more you're able to like, first of all, control it, but then direct it the way you want. Whether you want to get extra, I don't know, like adrenaline rush and get more, energy to use it later on, or whether you just want to calm it down. This is the reaction you can control, but you cannot do it if you're not knowing yourself. What is also good is when you finish a set of scrims, summarize it. Never take work at home. So like finish the scrims and put some stuff that you're like extremely happy that happened. So like I was good at, I don't know, like my aim was amazing today. My communication was super good, but then overall my utilities were like, okay, crap. So like that's my focus for the next days. Like if you summarize it, then you see the space where you can improve and where you can put your focus. So your either solo queues or scrims, they're more productive because you have an angle to like look at the game. And then you're not looking at the outcome itself, but you're like just in the game improving it. So always leave work at home by like putting some notes for you. What did you do well to keep your confidence up, but also like name one thing that you should be focusing on for the next coming days, so you know that this requires you grow. So like that's the awareness. And the thoughts, they'll be usually going into the things that are negative, so that you didn't do well.
Yeah,
and
I
just
actually
to
really like that.
solidify, sorry, I keep on doing this.
No, good.
To solidify Ula's point, when you're keeping track of the situations that tend to be triggering for you, also keep track of what you think it means. Ula was talking about, like, it makes no sense to just be angry about it being a rainy day. Like, you're not mad because it's raining. Like, you're not mad because it's wet. You're mad because, like, I really wanted to go to this outdoor concert and, like, now it's freaking canceled. Like, yeah, that's disappointing. That's legitimately disappointing. Like, your goal was blocked. You had a goal of partying and now you can't. Like, that's why. So, like, if someone misses a flash, not mad that they missed a flash. You're mad that maybe they didn't study their lineup. You're mad that maybe you think now we're going to lose the game, right? And, like, address, like, the real thought underneath. Address the real problem. If you feel like your teammate didn't know their lineup, then the solution is to address their lack of work ethic, or figure out whether or not there's something going on with them that you can be supportive with. Like, that's really the action point. But just being mad at a missed flash, like, that's pretty freaking useless. And it's a sign that there's something to look at, but it's not necessarily something that you need to look at there and then. So that's like the difference. So when you want to really maximize Ula's exercise, Really pay attention to what you think it means. Usually what you're reacting to is not the event itself, but it's your interpretation of the event and what you think that the presumed outcome is then going to be as a result. And like, there's an underlying belief that like you actually can't tolerate that outcome. Like you don't believe it in yourself. You don't even believe that you can tolerate the feeling of a loss, right? And that's what you're reacting to so strongly, because you're like, crap, now I have to deal with the fact that I'm going to be sad at the end of this game. When that's not the reality. It's not the case, but somehow you're convincing yourself of that in the moment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
be
think
in the
that
now.
trying to
Don't
like
think about the end.
yeah, I think trying to think of it as like a big picture is oh, 1 second, my bad. Sorry, Bailey's like doing something in the background. So I think that like trying to see a big picture is a really good approach. I think that a way that your typical player can also see that mindset is basically like looking at the fundamentals and like what does it all mean, I guess. Like you said, it is like it does make sense. Like if you're mad about somebody missing a flash, like what are you really like mad about? And I think by like attacking it to the core is a good way to solve issues, but not just that one issue, but more to come in the future without having to like constantly have the same conversation about like something slightly different and stuff like that. But I think that um, what I also wanted to touch on was summarizing the day. I think is also a really good habit to form. I think by like having goals at the beginning of the day and then summarizing them at the end of the day also helps you keep track of like your performance. But I think that something that we also like learned, there was like a period of time where we didn't have a coach and like Summer was like sitting in and being our like interim coach for a bit. We did learn this that I thought was pretty helpful also for like our communication. But at the end of the day, we would summarize pretty much what Ula said. Like we would summarize the day, like what were the things we were doing that were good, which is often what people forget in critique. It's always what did we do bad, what did we do bad, but it's also very useful to encourage what we're doing good, because especially if you're adjusting and improving in different areas, what you're doing good is a really good way to enforce good habits and make sure that they continue to happen, which also I think is a good like segue into what I think is also an important skill is just critique. I think that like critique is really, really important in terms of a team dynamic, but also as an individual, if you're hard to work with, that might close walls. Like it might close doors for you once you start moving up to higher levels. There's better players to choose from. Maybe that side of you is hard to deal with and people don't want to work with you. So I think that like understanding how to like give a bit of critique I think is also useful, because maybe you're summarizing as a team and maybe that's like a team building thing you're doing. So I think that like maybe if you guys have like ideas, but I think that just like again like the end result, thinking of like what you're trying to achieve within critique is like a really good way to try to deliver things properly. And something that I actually recently learned to give a little bit of like player experience. I often try to speak to people with like respect, and as a leader I think that sometimes I'm too nice in my critique, where I'm not really doing the team justice by being nice with every critique that I deliver, because I might not be sending the signal of like urgency. So if I'm like, hey, like, you know, you really like, it's okay, but you need to like fix this and you need to fix that. And maybe the thing that I really wanted them to fix is getting lost in like the conversation and they don't really know like where to focus their attention. Also because I'm not like delivering it in a sense that like benefits them as well as me. So I was like wondering what you
So,
guys have to add to that.
yeah, so like we as people tend to always follow and listen those that are strong. So we want to see the leader being strong, being certain, being like 100% sure like what we're about to do. So if you're on AGL and then you just try like, hey, so how about we go B? Then that means nothing. Like I would not go B. Like I would feel like, okay, so she or he doesn't even know what they want to do. Like, but then if you go like, okay, guys, we go B. Now you do this, you smoke, you flash, blah blah blah, and then we go clear expectations. The same is with what you're saying. If you're analyzing with your team, I don't know, like the game, the ideas that you had, like the macro game or whatever, and if you put it in a really nice way, saying like, hey, you know, I think you may wish to improve how you throw the grenades because you're missing some of them, that means nothing to me. But like if you tell me like, okay, today after the scrims, I want you to go to the practice room and like try to be throwing the grenades for like 15 minutes and make sure that every single one falls in the right place, then yeah, that's the task for me. That this is something I know, this is expectation. So like the stronger you're communicating what the team is expecting, the more the team is like more keen to follow you, but it doesn't have to be like in a rude way, right? You can be delivering a strong direct message and still being nice to the team, and people will respect you for putting your effort into like, you know, looking at what they can do better basically. So yeah, this is the tone of voice, this is the type of message you're saying, this is how you build your relationship outside of the game too, because if you're only building like if you only like with your teammates during the game and then after the scrims you just leave and you don't give a crap about your teammates at all, you don't even chit chat with them, then you're not building the relationship, and then they will not care, then they will not come to you when there will be in the need, they will not trust your calls. So like this is all what you build with your personality, and it doesn't mean that, you know, only IGL is doing it. Every single team member should be engaged in the team, and the relationship that we have outside of the team environment, outside of the practice, is translating fantastically into the game itself. So you can't be like hostile, not liking each other in the team, and then expect that you are going to be like a super winning team. This is not going to happen, because there will be always those moments that people will be thinking like, hey, you know, I don't like you, so I'm not bothered to help you out. That's it. Like, that's it.
You won't go the extra mile for your teammate if you don't like them. And that
Yeah.
in a situation where you're like, fuck them, I don't need a flash for them, I'm gonna do my own thing. That'll happen whether you think it will or it won't.
Yeah, if there's a choice between my success and yours, and you're not nice to me, it's me every time. Absolutely.
It's me. Absolutely.
That's good.
I'm nice. I'm not that nice.
I'm not that nice. Yeah, I think it's good to find a balance, because I think like your typical player is probably leaning on the nasty side of criticism, which I think is like often important to think about a lot of things. Like, what are you achieving with this? At the end of the day, like, what's your goal too? Like in a game, you're trying to win the game, right? So is you giving like nasty feedback that doesn't, again, going back to time traveling, is it relevant to the now? Is it going to help them in the moment? Is what you're saying going to achieve the effect you want it to? If not, I feel like you should probably just shut up, maybe save it for later if you're actually a team and you're not in a pug setting. But again, I think it's really important to think about what you're achieving with what you're saying. And I think that this is very common that players don't do, like in FPL and FPLC. All the like amateur players don't often spend enough time in this department, and I think they are like, without realizing it, they do affect like the outcome of the game. And a funny thing, actually, like from my experience of FPLC, I had a day of streaming or two where I was like, I'm telling you guys, I've lost every single game when I've had bad vibes. And then I went out of my way to like every game, I was like, guys, I swear to God, good vibes only. If I hear people fucking, complaining and moaning all game, like I'm gonna be pissed. And every game I did that, we fucking won. It was really like a good dynamic. It was a fun atmosphere. And it's like, dude, like, who would have thought, Like, it's actually very, very obvious, but we often
Passion
forget
and
about
fun
it.
wins it all.
Yeah.
I want to point out one thing, because you were talking about most people choose to be nasty, right? And
Yeah.
I want to point out there's a difference between being nasty and being direct. Being
Yeah.
direct does not make you a mean person. It just means that you said exactly the thing, and you did it objectively. You said, hey, you missed that flash, which is inherently different than like, dude, you're a freaking bad player. Like, any good player is going to hit this flash and they're going to hit it every time. The fact that you didn't hit that, like, I don't know what the frick you're doing. Like, that's a dick move right there. That's a nasty thing to say. But if you say, you missed that flash, we need you to hit it, you're just being direct. You're being efficient with your words, and you're not beating around the bush. You're not being overly nice to make it impossible for the person to actually figure out what you want. You're just saying the thing. That's really what it comes down to. You have every bit of permission to be direct with your team. You do not have permission to be mean. Just like very simply, just don't be a dick. Like, and everybody knows what that means. Like, you know when you're doing it. And if we can just like stick to that rule, you're going to get really far. Because if you are ever delivering feedback that a normal, self-respecting person would have a hard time tolerating, you are the one who's messed up. It doesn't matter how egregious the person's mistake was. You are the one who's in the wrong if you are saying something in a way that violates that person's self-respect. And the reason why people get so baited into treating people this way is because the emotion of shame is extremely effective for behavior change. I'm sure most of us have learned that throughout our school years of when we were yelled at by our parents or by our teachers and we feel really shameful. We do tend to right ourselves quickly because as social creatures, we naturally want to do things that allow us to be accepted by the group. We do not want to be rejected because in our evolutionary days, like, that meant you did not survive. Not having a group to protect you quite literally meant that you were just left to survive on your own, and then you would likely die on your own. So we're very compelled to respond to shaming stuff. So that is the bait that we get stuck in, because when we do successfully shame someone, they probably will change the behavior, and that's inherently rewarding for us. But it's also us just being bad people. We're manipulating people at that point when we know we could do it better and we can be kinder and have a better experience for everyone. So knowing that it's the easy road for us to take and sometimes the effective road for us to take, we really do need to be diligent about making the choices, about being direct, not nasty, just direct, and staying objective. Leave your judgment out of the situation. It doesn't matter whether or not you think the person's a good or a bad player. Your opinion's freaking irrelevant. Get over yourself. Okay? Like, it just matters that you're giving objective feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just super important. I would love to see like more players challenging themselves to better themselves in that way. And in another way, going straight into professionalism, I do think that a lot of the players who are tier 2, tier 3, just because you're not on an org, just because you're not pro yet, does not mean you can't carry yourself in a professional manner. So I think that it's like a perfect segue to how you carry yourself. And I mean, I'll just like how I kind of see professionalism just off the get-go, and you guys can chime in with what you think is important too. I think how you carry yourself is professionalism, how you speak to others, how when you show up on time, if you're doing not just your job, but if you're trying to be like your best self, trying to be your best self, and also not wasting the time, because that time is valuable. How you spend it can mean a lot. But if your team is wasting time constantly having to play catch up because somebody doesn't feel like practicing things they need to practice, then you're wasting everybody's time, and now your team can't focus on this next thing that should be focused on because we're too busy worrying about the flashes that keep being missed or whatever the case is. But I think that's also it's super important, and sometimes this can be like a deal breaker depending on how bad it is, depending on like the player. And if you're not an outstanding player, if you're not an anomaly, I think it's important that players understand that if you're not an anomaly, which means you're probably not simple. You're probably not the few players in the world who can do whatever the fuck they want. Not saying that they do, but I'm just saying, like, if someone could, it'll probably be those players. But even so, like, you have to be an outstanding player, like, way beyond everybody else to be able to get away with, like, stuff like that. And even so, I think if you haven't made it by now, you should probably humble yourself a little bit, because clearly there's stuff to work on, right? So I think just remembering that there is so much room for improvement, and it doesn't mean you're more or less of a person because you have to improve. If anything, it's a good thing to me. If I see a lot of room for myself to grow, that's a good sign because it means I'm not capped. It means I'm not stuck where I am. It means I can get better, which is honestly very hopeful for me. It gives me motivation. It gives me something like to push for, like a better version of myself. Like even after all this like all these like, you know, I've spent a lot of time trying to like work on like sports psychology, working with you two ladies, and even doing my own research. And I still know there's tons of stuff for me to work on even now within my own like soft skill game too. So I think that like it just shows that there's so much room for improvement. And going into that, I guess I just want to hear from you ladies, like what do you think is like really core to like being a true professionalist person? I don't know. Those are both really good recommendations. I actually have watched a lot of Andrew Huberman through Ula's recommendations. I actually think it's like a really interesting channel. I sometimes like after practice, I'm eating dinner. I just like have, you know, my Logitech wireless headphones and I can walk around and listen to the podcast. I actually like speeding things like 1.5 or 2% so it doesn't make me feel so bad. Like I can like watch something long a little bit shorter and still like hear it all. My little tip, if you guys like hearing things a little bit fast forwarded, but I was still able to like hear everything he was saying and stuff. So I think that's a really good recommendation. I actually think you say like even though it's a business book, I actually have learned this like through my boyfriend John because he just loves like books and stuff. But he made a really good point that like honestly in business is a very competitive like field, and if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense to link the two, because I mean when you're competing, you're versing other people, you're trying to be the best version of yourself, you're trying to get that edge up on everybody else. So it makes a lot of sense for those books to also be useful. The book I was going to recommend was either Atomic Habit or Power of Habit. And basically, the TLDR is like making small changes in your life that have very powerful, like long term effects. I think it's very often that people like they'll get motivated and they're like, okay, time to watch 5 hours of demos and 5 fucking hours of deathmatch. Like, woo! And it's like you're not gonna again like long term, right? We talked about it earlier. Like long term, you need to be able to continue playing a year from now. But if you're burnt out, your dopamine's crashed, you need to like make small changes that will make it's not fun. You don't see them right away, but they're the most meaningful usually, and they have the biggest impact long term. So thinking about that a bit more, it'll also help maybe do things that aren't fun and become routine, become something that's your norm. Like I used to dread watching demos. I mean, like I had ADD, I still do, but it was like hard for me to watch demos. And here I am, like IGLing now, and I watch demos all the time. It doesn't bother me anymore. I don't find it boring. I actually find it entertaining. I think it's fun learning new stuff. I love like when I see the change from what my actions like lead to, I guess, like me becoming better, smarter, reacting to more scenarios more accurately. Like these are all like really rewarding feelings for me. So I think just like incorporating new habits in any form of life, I think all of these like tips are really important, not just to be a gamer, not just to be the best player, but also like the best person you can be. Like learning all this stuff and trying to apply it to your life, you'll end up being a better person. You'll look back and be a lot happier with yourself, who you've become. And honestly, like I would have never thought I'd be here when I was like 18. I didn't know what I wanted to do. School wasn't that great for me. So I think that like
Same.
yeah, like I'm honestly at a way better place in life, and it's through gaming. I've matured way more than I think I ever would have if I wasn't doing what I did now. Because it gave me the challenge of trying to be my best self. And yeah, I think that like is all really good input too from both of you ladies. Thank you so much for coming on out of the goodness of your heart, sharing information with the young ones, and I hope that you guys gained something from this and found it entertaining at least. And yeah, just wrapping it up. If you guys want to say anything, you can too. Make sure to follow them. Their Twitters are under their name. And yeah, it was fun. Thank you for showing up today.